Hello, and welcome to the Maker Elevate Chat series. I'm Kate, your host, an award winning brand designer, helping SMEs to elevate their business into a brand. Joining me today is Jing Reilly, a cyber psychologist with more than 10 years marketing experience. Together, we are going to share reasons and tips as to why building a consistent brand will be of benefit to your business. Hello and welcome to this Maker Elevate chat. Today we're talking about how resonating equals understanding your audience and the importance of understanding your audience. And how we resonate as brands is very important in terms of building that trust. So how do we resonate with our customers? That feeling of belonging is very important, and as we spoke about before, that value overlap, making sure that the brand is aligned to its customers' values, and with that you're serving a need that they have, something that resonates with people, and this comes back to the value overlap, but being authentic and being genuine as a brand can show your customers that you care about them and that you're serious as a brand. And knowing what they need is very important for a brand. You're not just selling. It's important to know what they need from your brand, whether that's a want or a need. And what I mean by that, and maybe Jing, you'll can explain this a little bit further, is that there's as a customer you can have a need, and then there's not knowing that you have a need, and the brand can supply that need you didn't even know you had. So there's kind of two ways of selling, satisfying a need and satisfying a need they didn't realize they had. Maybe you could tell a little bit more, Jing.
Yes, and you actually brought up a very interesting point about human. Is the more we understand about human, the more we realize that we're actually very complex, right? And somebody once said, can you imagine how much more difficult physics would be if particles can think? So, we all have different views and different experience. So we think very differently. So when you're targeting customers, even though you have your ideal, segment of your customers, but they all think differently as well. So it's really important, as you said, thinking about their needs, and what you have identified there is actually excellent. Is that there are some needs that we know we need, we have. So, for example, my son needs a short. I go onto the website and buy him short. However, I can be browsing on the website and come across something that delight me, surprise me, and I could make an impulsive purchase because of that. And so there are two ways that I make purchase, and there are many other ways that different people make a different purchase. And I think in knowing your customers and connecting with your customers can be done, one, by research, working with experts, two, by testing. And I think testing is very important, and you can learn from what works and what doesn't, um, and then you can constantly revise your brand and your messaging as well. So what I also wanted to kind of to bring another kind of dimension into this understanding customers is that it isn't just how we think. It's how we think is influenced by our culture, by the location, by a lot of different factors. So if you look at it like very successful brand, for example, Coca-Cola, you might come across different slogan that they use in different markets. So when Coca-Cola went to Africa, what they did was their main tagline would be "a billion reasons to believe in Africa." They made themselves to be part of the community there, and they invoked that emotion of nationalism. So it's for brand that is very powerful if you connect
And
emotionally.
what's interesting about that example, Jing, as well as the emotional connection, that's a brand that has managed to stay consistent but is flexible to its audience.
Yes, yes, It's so being consistent doesn't mean that you can't be flexible. It's being consistent. It doesn't mean you can't use a different slogan or different messages. But what they had done is that, you know, Coca-Cola hasn't really evolved their colors, hasn't evolved their logo dramatically over the years, and their taste. And what they have done is, because how we feel, our political situation changes, our consumerism behavior changes, and a lot of things changes. You know, they've taken that into account. They have their competitors, they have more competitors, so they have to figure out a different innovative way to maintain that market share. So it's quite complicated, and I think, you know, this is why working with expert, I'm sure they have millions and billions of dollars investing branding.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah,
suppose from a small business point of view, Coca-Cola is way off. And
yeah,
in order to resonate with customers as a small business, you know, as we talked about before, that familiarity, that consistency can help build trust. You know, I'm sure all of this can be quite overwhelming to a small business. All we're talking about being familiar, being consistent. You know, Jesus, how do I do all this? And
yeah.
we know that it's complicated, and I suppose we're speaking quite in depth about this. We're both experts in the field, but how would you simplify it for a small business in how to resonate, how to get their customer to feel or evoke that feeling for their customer?
I think it is very important to acknowledge that this is a complex and overwhelming experience for everybody, right? So even for experts, we have to prepare ourselves in terms of the journey, which most of the time is unknown, that we don't know where we're going to end up, right? When you start this. But there are simple things like everything that we talked about, you know, in our videos are quite important, and then they are easy to apply. But it's a continuous process, and it's a consistent process. You know, how do you increase the trust? And you can do ABC. And how do you make, you know, your brand to look familiar, by understanding what they're looking for and what they're used to, right? So familiarity breeds liking. So if you offer something that's familiar, they're less likely to reject you. So and then you know, we also talked about consistency. Consistency is, you know, it can apply consistency quite easily throughout your presentation, throughout your branding, your website, and even the owner's behavior. So if you're the one doing the selling, you
Yeah,
need to be consistent so people
yeah.
like you. And right, so what you say and how you say it, you know, consistency is actually a very hard one. Like, you know, I'm still working on it. Everyone's a work in progress. So don't be too hard on yourself as well as a small business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be an echo that would be a message I would echo as well, that especially when a business is starting up, they can't think of everything. They just have to get the business off the ground. Um, but as you said, there are small ways, small, easy ways to be consistent. And that, you know, considering your audience in order to be able to resonate with them eventually. Um, whether it's you know, from the very basic level of choosing colors that you didn't choose yourself as a business owner, that are considered of the target audience, um, in order to start building up that brand, to elevate your business into a brand. Um, Thank you so much for joining us, Jing. I hope those listening and those watching have found some great tips and insights that they can carry into their businesses in order to develop their brand further and to build trust with their customers.
Thank you for having me, Kate. And I think it's really important, and I hope people find it useful as well. And I think learning from other people is again another continuous, you know, thing we can do to better ourselves and to make better decisions. And
Absolutely.
I've learned a lot from you today. And
Thank you so much. And very likewise, Jing. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
no problem.
Bye.
Bye.